Hey guys, it's Abby. So I am going to give my presentation over the Oyo Empire today. So I hope you guys enjoy. As you can see, I have a little graphic. I'm really proud of that graphic. So I'm going to talk about the origins of the Oyo, and then I'm going to give a little brief introduction and kind of highlight some of the art and culture surrounding the empire. Then I'm going to discuss the slave trade and their expansion and growth. And then I'm finally going to discuss the decline of the Oyo. So let's dive right into the origins. Uh, as you can see right here is the map where the Oyo Empire was located. Over here to the east is the Dahomey, and then down here is the to the southwest is the Benin or the Edo. This is also kind of where modern day Nigeria is. So this whole area is kind of known as Yoruba land. So the Yoruba people are the ethnic group that lives there. The principal settlements of the area for the Oyo Empire is the Igbohu, Quid Oyo, which is the old Oyo or the capital, and then Ife, which is a not the capital, but one of their kind of religious and cultural centers. The Oyo claimed descendants from an exiled king from Ife, and this came from an oral tradition from Benin that said that uh, they tell of a king of Ife who not only sent a prince to rule other areas, but also sent a master craftsman to spread his sculptor skills around the area. So we know kind of we can trace back through oral traditions that the first king of the Oyo came from Ife. We know that they benefit from being kind of near the savanna regions because of their ability to access trade, both with the sea, but then also into the Sahara and trade with the Mediterranean. Oral traditions are a very big part of the Oyo culture, and their art is very tied to their cultural traditions and their religious oral traditions. So one notable figure is Oranmiyan. He is the son of Oduwa. He is the supposedly original founder of the Oyo state. And since he's the son of Oduwa, Oduwa is the one who founded Ife. He's the one that people believe is from Benin. He was the king that was sent to Ife. So surrounding this man, there is this staff of sorts. It's not necessarily staff, more like a pole. It's about 18 feet tall, and it is called the Opa Oranmiyan or the Oranmiyan staff. This staff symbolizes the essence of Ife life, and is the first traditional source to the Yoruba people. They have it dedicated to Ormian, not because this was in any way used by him, but more as like a kind of establishment and shrine to him. That man standing in the picture there, as you can see, that is the Ormian staff. It has inscriptions on it, and it is still standing today in Old Oyo or Quid Oyo. That man standing there is Lawrence Otomio. He is the first guide and the first man to like tour and make tour the shrine and the staff. Uh, he said that this staff represents the essence of Ife life, and it was dedicated to Oranmiyan as the propagator of the Yoruba race. So now I wanted to dive into some brief art and culture information. So right there, that image is a sculpture of Sango, who is a descendant of Ormian. The Arima Obo is a first son of a king, is what they called him. Basically, he's the heir to the throne, if you think about it that way. He's the heir to the seat of his father, and he was given much honor and power among the culture. The problem is once old Oreo was taken over, and new Oreo became kind of this central figure. It's the same city, but it got destroyed and then rebuilt. New Oyo, the seat for the son, like his cultural ancestral seat and house, no longer exist. So the ruins have kind of become a shrine and a cultural tourist spot of sorts. It's the ruins of a mud house, and it kind of shows the architecture of Old Oyo as the city. So it's one of their like premier cultural places. Sango, who is the descendant of Ormian, is a founding father among the Yoruba people. There's many, many shrines to him throughout Old and New Oyo, and he's held in extreme high esteem by the Yoruba people. The Akison Market is a market that existed in Old Oyo. It was called the King's Market, and it was where people went. It was the main like market in the city. Now they replicated it, and it exists basically for like cultural continuity, so that the people can kind of exist and embrace their culture. Um, a lot of merchants and people just bring food, clothing, farm equipment, wares, anything really, when it's being held, and it's just a very big celebration. Drumming is a huge part of Yoruba culture. It is one of the most significant forms of communication for these people, and it is used throughout um Oyo, Dahomey, Benin, like this whole area. Drumming was a huge, huge part of their culture. Drumming within the palace, specifically for Oyo standards, was a royal privilege. And it shows the cultural continuation of practices in the Oyo Empire. Um, there was like a waiting hall at the entrance to the palace, and that was where the drummers would sit. And the only people who would be able to experience the drumming were visitors to the royal palace or the royals themselves. Nowadays, drumming is a huge part of culture. It's not just royals who can experience it, it's a very big thing. And drummers have a lot of drummers have their names tied to their cultural heritage as drummers. So a lot of it is like passed down through the family. And the name Alifin, which means king, is a big name in modern day Oyo or Nigeria, which basically denotes that you were of royal drumming descendants, if that makes sense. So next I'm going to talk about the slave trade and expansion. So the Oyo had access to a lot of different resources in the area. Um, their resources that they kind of exploited, not really exploited, but just used the local resources, included like okra, yams, dates, palm oil, fish, things like that. But then they were also really big on iron smelting. So they would create different kinds of iron tools and weapons to trade and use amongst their people. Again, they were located on the Slave Coast, which is a coast right there at the Horn of Africa that was very, very big for the slave trade, mainly because that was one of the first locations that Europeans were able to access on like a regular basis. They were able to get there. So it became kind of their premier spot to go to establish the slave trade and exchange and slavery. Um, one of the reasons why the Oyo became such big kind of involved in the slave trade was because they had the infrastructure to um kind of build off of the slave trade. So when the Europeans arrived, the Oyo had already been using slavery from like past warfare and trading amongst sub-Saharan groups and ethnic groups and things like that. So they use that uh kind of system they already had in place and related it to a more widespread slavery, and they were able to use that to grow their empire basically. Alongside that came the European trade that was able to help the Oyo grow into a much bigger empire. because they were able to trade these slaves for European wares and things like that, which were, you know, much, much more easier to use, alongside the fact that the Dahomey and the Benin were also using these new weapons and things like that. It was easier to compete against them in this slave trade. Their expansion involves well, first they had a very big cavalry and archer army. That was kind of what they were known for in the area. They used this kind of as a way to protect trade routes in the Sahara through into the Mediterranean. And so they were kind of known for their cavalry. They kind of grew and grew and grew, and they finally acquired territory in Borgu and Nupe states, which are surrounding states of the Oyo Empire. And they reached their peak expansion, like peak empire, in the early 17th century. That's when they finally conquered about 13 kingdoms surrounding them. And they were able to like grow exponentially from what they had before. They actually went to war with the Dahomey for about 4 years, from 1726 to 1730 approximately, and they won this war. Because they won this war, they were able to take some of Dahomey's coastal seaports and get even more involved in trade and access to the sea. So their decline happened right around their peak. They had reached regional dominance. They were the bigger power in the area. And suddenly there was this like idea and new invasion of northern Islamic states coming down south and trying to conquer the areas. So one of their principal cities, Ilion, was conquered in the 1820s, and that kind of set the tone, and from there it just went downhill exponentially. The after Ilion was conquered by the Fulani Emirate, it became an outpost for the Sokoto Caliphate, and from there it was just kind of like a domino effect. Oyo, the political system crumbled, the economic system crumbled, the empire split into small states, and these small states split further into small states, and there was just a lot of competition and warfare among all of these states as the empire declined. Finally, the British entered the area, and what we now know as Nigeria, that area became a British colony in 1861. And from there, it got split in the 1900 in North and South Nigeria. Uh, and then they joined in 1914, became a federation in 1954, and finally Nigeria gained independence from Britain in 1960. So there's not really like a confirmed ending point of the Oyo because it kind of just fell apart. But they definitely, after the conquering of Iliorn, was kind of the ending point for the Oyo. So that is my presentation. These are my sources that I used. I apologize if I mispronounced anything. I tried my best. So I hope you guys have a great week and a good luck on all of your finals. Thank you so much.